we also have to look at the perspective that if we don't manage disease effectively, then that in itself can be a pain down the road as well. So I think there's a need to, on one hand, manage, let's say, livestock production in a way that needs less antibiotics. But equally, we need to ensure that we manage the health of the young starts to maintain that program that has welfare reasons for one reason, but equally because of the possibilities that are out there, we can, if you like, we need to ensure that we don't think on welfare problems, disease issues, from one side or policing cause problems on the other side of the risk. I think there's a lot of balance to be struck, so I do think between vaccination programs, between veterinary and farmers, and also use of, let's say, for instance, in BDD in Ireland, we ran a program for eradicating BDD, which has been extremely effective. We were led by an idealistic position, but in the practicality of the farmer, researcher, and the veterinarian together, it can get practical solutions that can go a lot forward than ideas. I think that's the basis.
Thank you for your introductory remarks. We will introduce this project, this project. We also have with us today David Marcus to talk about this very interesting project. Yes, so these are I'm the others. I'm from the Others Research Institute, Culture, Fisheries and Food. We do go together with a lot of other partners, many of whom are still here today. We have been executing the design project the last 3 years and a half. 3 years. Extension, low cost extension, obviously. And the majority of our work has really been targeted towards people in fields, on farms, veterinarians, farmers, advisors, practitioners. We have collected a lot of good practices, best practices that could reduce the need for antimicrobials, organized many networking activities, also many of them digital. In the COVID years, we have organized events, and we have also demonstrated on farm an innovative approach, which we think is very helpful in helping to reduce antimicrobials on farms. Nevertheless, we do have some recommendations that we think could also be relevant for people working in policy environments, or maybe not so much on the fields, but maybe the European or national policy environment. And well, I'm going to present to you now our draft. These are recommendations. We call them draft. We have had some lively discussions during our last project meeting in the morning session today. And let's say use some kind of a test panel to see whether you can also relate to our recommendations. The first one being, perhaps quite obviously, support change at farm level. Different ways to support change at farm level, eventually at farm level. That's where the antimicrobials are being used. That's where good practices, good hygiene, vaccines are being administered to the animals. So obviously, we need to support change at farm level. Not just by targeting farmers only, but for instance, by facilitating collaboration between all livestock industry and research experts towards a common goal. Those are quite important, common goal. We also think there should be promotion of social supply chain mechanisms, and not just towards the farm level, but across the whole supply chain mechanism that can support behavioral change at the farm level. These could be at the national level, perhaps with some guidance or other directives, perhaps on the European level, and also consider a wider systems approach in line with competing interests. I think the previous speaker already hinted to that. I think we use the word holistic. We use the word systemic systems approach. At farm level, animal health is not the only issue at play. Farmers also have to be economically profitable. They have to think about animal welfare, about climate robustness, and we think a wider systems approach recommendations, which tries to align, maybe tries to exploit quick wins or tries to avoid as much as possible, tries to avoid trade-offs between issues such as animal health and welfare, profitability, environmental sustainability. Next slide, please. We also think we should support in certain ways different types of knowledge exchange, different types of knowledge transfer, even though we don't always like the word knowledge transfer. Someone has the knowledge transferring somewhere, but anyway, there are different types which can also appeal to needs, types of different farmers. Not every farmer should or can be approached in the same ways, which we, for instance, already saw in our projects, UI projects, effective ways in one country to do knowledge exchange are not necessarily the most effective ways in another country. Encourage the co-development of active options and tools for animal health management. And we also think it could be interesting to fund something like a standalone project, which can be done at the European level, to analyze the cost effectiveness of different interventions, different ways to support, to stimulate, or to incentivize farmers to take action. There are many ways, communication, education is one way, also think about regulation. Within communication and education, there are many different ways in which you can do that. Some of them might be more costly than others, but perhaps also more effective. And we think there should be more research. Really trying to create insights into where should we put our money. We really want to stimulate change at the farm. Second sets of recommendations is actually also related to supporting change at farm level. It is our mean a very effective approach to support changes at farm level. We call this the multi-actor farm health approach. It's an approach in which not just the farmer and the veterinarian, but farmer, veterinarian, nutritionists, other advisors, together collectively, screen the farm, look at its strong weak points, and decide on an intervention package, combining different individual innovations, individual changes to the farm. This whole process being coached, facilitated. This morning we had a discussion on whether it's coaching or facilitating, but coached/facilitated by a coach. And we have actually had some very good experiences with that. So we think country-specific analysis on how this multi-actor farm health approach could perhaps be more institutionalized into national regulatory requirements, or perhaps in more official public or even private advisory services. Fund the training and accreditation of these kind of coaches, so that the quality of this coaching approach remains good, that its reputation remains safeguarded, and that it becomes an effective way of doing. Typically, veterinarians, nutritionists, advisors, they are very specialized in their topic, but they are perhaps not always the best person to coach, to facilitate, to motivationally coach people, farmers. And then the other ways also support promotion of this approach and further dissemination of this approach, so that it could become more mainstream. Incentivize in different ways the establishment and also continuation of multi-acre farm health teams on farms. It may look a little relatively costly to do, but we have shown that it's actually very effective, so it's our cost effectiveness might actually be very positive compared to other ways of disseminating knowledge and support change in farming. And support, one way could be to support the development of business models, where people could develop a business around being coached, around facilitating multi-acre farm health teams. Perhaps are probably in different ways in various member states and in various supply chains, depending on the structure of the supply chain and the associated industries. Set of recommendations goes to the One Health approach, but we think there should be more effort to really take One Health from a high-level way of discussing and providing high-level recommendations to put it really into practice. It's about facilitating cross-fertilization nationally, internationally, across different sectors, alongside monitoring and transparency with care for data, for the ownership of data, etc. Some specific issues here or specific recommendations. More focus is needed on the mechanisms which can foster links between EU levels, networks, and very local level operation groups, for instance. More visible collaboration globally and across public health, statutory health, environmental health. So that's really put into practice, not just remains a thing or a dream. It's one health approach. Again, about this monitoring and transparency, we think it's really needed to establish very good monitoring methods in ways that are compatible across countries, across different sectors. Monitoring not only of AMU, monitoring systems of antimicrobial use are currently in many countries relatively well developed, but not so much yet of AMR, knowing where do the problems occur with sectors. Can we relate that to certain practices, behaviors, certain conditions where AMR is really popping up? And then just not monitoring to be able to report something, but also monitoring in ways that support the making of good decisions and interventions. So these were our draft recommendations. I hope in the rest of this afternoon we can, not exclusively, but we can maybe touch upon them again and discuss about them. And as I said, we will soon, not as in the coming days, but the coming weeks, finalize, fine-tune these and write these things for recommendations. So thank you for listening. And go to most important destruction of the project. I like particularly the focus on education, something that sometimes has been neglected. Carlos, of course, working for the money, and the money most important, and also challenging. But I'm sure our panelists will give us their take on this. But I'd like to close this initial tour of opinion with our keynote speakers, and in particular with the next keynote speaker, who's on immigration, Jean-Charles Mecani from TGRE, research innovation unit.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes.
So, first, sorry not to have been with you yesterday. But I would have presented more or less the same slides and first, I will not focus too much on something probably you do very well, which is the EIPI. It's now the thematic network that links quite much research to practices. So I guess on the practices you have a lot already. We focus a little bit on policy and research. The background, whether you look at PCDC or EFSA or OID, there is a global concern about antimicrobial resistance. There's a word to say anyway that antimicrobial resistance, in my opinion, is essentially seen as a public health issue. It's seen so far as an animal health issue. Certainly, the need to fight diseases. So, if we look at the policy background, we could spend a bit of time on this. Really, in summary, it was mentioned already, obesity is the Green Deal and the non-for strategy, and its willingness to foster transition to more sustainable agriculture systems. One particular clear objective, is the reduction of sales of antimicrobials in farm animals production by 2030, reducing this by 50%. There is also a link to it, and I think it's important to find the link for welfare. European welfare legislation is
Now, we have also implemented the animal health regulatory framework as we need for all disease, prevent disease in an appropriate way, then we will reduce the need to use antibiotics because we will have less infections. And there is now a new, not so new, animal health regulatory framework, where it's low, and now coming one of the and they are now in this framework reinforced set of provisions for antibiotics. Also, I don't think it was so well developed in the biosecurity is mentioned, I don't know, get more slow. Biosecurity as an important thing. Now, of course, the new veterinary legislation, veterinary medicine products, and adopted and now are probably one of the other ones. But what I want to say also next to this regulatory framework is, are we so bad? I don't think we are so bad. The 11th SBAC report looked into the years 1920. For the 25 countries which provided sales data for all years between 2011 and 2020, an overall decline in sales of 43% was observed, with a noticeable decrease in sales identified in some of the highest selling countries. And only in these 2 years, a 5% decrease was reached in 19 of these. So we are on a good way, but progressed quite a lot in the veterinary. Now there are also some countries where there was, and also there is a large advantage, which brings also opportunities to improve also in those countries where the network of use of and one thing also to be noticed in the Jackhammer report, third report of Jackhammer. Now looking at the years of the year 2016 2017, the antimicrobial consumption was lower in food producing animals than humans. And this was the first time this situation was so since so progress is there, good progress. So still we need the target is there, but we are so it's kind of a positive message. Now, up to where can we focus without having basic problems? So good question. Next slide, please. We work within the framework of the EU action plan against antimicrobial resistance, which has 3 pillars. You know this. Making the EU best practice region on AMR. We will come to each of these pillars, boosting research, and that's where I from, and shaping the global agenda. AMR is a global issue. We can work at the level, and the data I gave here about reducing the use and the consumption of antimicrobial is for the EU. Globally, making the EU best practice regions, you will see the next slides, a lot of text, it's for reference and information, of course, a number of them. Next slide. Yeah, so taking the EU best practice region, there are elements that are linked to the regulatory. Legislation is one of these components, but a lot of best practices have to be implemented in the member states. There is no AMR legislation, let's say, other than bits and pieces here and there, to regulate what the member states best practices. There are guidelines, etc. But a lot of things have to be implemented by in the member states, in the member states, by industry, by different factors, including policy. The next slide is that's the elements. Here, the new legislation on veterinary medicinal products. We had since 2006 a ban on antimicrobial promoters. Now, with this new legislation, a number of new actions are there, ban of penalties, of animals, ban on productive use of antimicrobial feedstock, restrictions on the use of antimicrobials, the reinforced ban on the use of antimicrobials, the possibility to reserve issue certain antimicrobials for humans, and the obligation for member states to collect data on the safety and use of antimicrobials, fixing science-based maximum residue limits for cross-contamination of feed with antimicrobials and other measures on the food and responsibility. You can look at it. I want to take minutes of the next slide. More details. The whole of the CAP coming from the GRP, even if I'm not from a policy department of the GRP, there is a common agricultural policy that they contribute to the European Deal, and as part of it, there are 9 strategic objectives in the new common agricultural policy, and one of it is protect food and health quality. There are some elements related to resistance or animal welfare. And part of it, next slide please. I want to focus a little bit on ecosystems. And there is document, the link is one of the slides, on the potential agricultural practices that ecosystem will support. So the ecosystem is there as part of the development programs, and these agricultural practices should cover activities in different aspects, including animal welfare systems, but also environment. They should be defined on the basis of the needs and priorities identified at national level. So that the organization is not even is there in the country to establish actions within their action plans. But the measures, the level of ambition of these initiatives have to be beyond the requirements and obligations established under the baseline. So that's the additional normal requirement. And they should contribute to achieving the requirements. And the next slide will give some highlights or examples. Yeah, I took a part of it where it's related to regulatory and animal welfare, with some examples of measures that could be covered by eco-schemes. And those coded with the GS actions to enhance animal welfare or address contact resistance. By addressing animal welfare and number of cases, we will help in reducing the use of contact. And you have here, for instance, feeding bans, you have friendly housing conditions, you have practices and standards, and then you have very common rules, etc. There are a number of measures. This is an element. There are a number of other actions in order to make examples of measures that can be supported in the United States that can contribute to the fight. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes. Yeah. Now coming to research. Here is to give you an highlighting or illustrating the fact that antimicrobial resistance looks at essentially from the public health standpoint. Here are the type of initiatives on research in the public health domain that contribute to a certain extent, to the fight against antimicrobial resistance. Those from typical projects, public partnerships with member states and beyond, large, to basic food-style research with PRC, with life, with the knowledge angle, education, research and innovation. The financing loans for small and big research and innovation companies, for the instruments for the public private partnership. This can be done because one issues. For the next topic, in the domain where I work in cluster 6, you will see that we have the same budget as cluster in the human health, but we have to deal with animal and plant forestry, bioeconomy. So we are not in a position to do this in the animal health. So this is to give you the frame and the ambition of actions that are there against AMR in awareness. And we'll come to some elements of one. The next slide, please. So one of the big projects and initiatives that we have in probably the veterinary domain is the One Health European Joint Program, which is a project 5 years that started in 2018 with 44 partners. And the budget is 90 million euros, half of it coming from contribution from the EU fund for Horizon 2020. And we've got a number of joint research projects and joint projects. Next slide, please. And you see there, just to illustrate a little bit the awareness approach. The only truly awareness initiative in research in the world for the moment in a balanced way that you have in a number of countries and in more age annualized and SPCs, food safety, age public health. In a number of countries, you have entities from the advice and from the public health medical domains working together within this framework. Next slide, please. And this awareness probably is not fully and truly awareness because the environment dimension is not so much focused on the HGV. And also, most of the work is done on foodborne zone resistance. But substantial work as well is done on antimicrobial resistance, with 7 projects representing nearly 16 million euros within this One Health European program. And they work also on emerging states. Next slide. Now, this was one more specifically One Health project, where the number of this is not exhaustive, but even an insight on projects that are related directly or partly to antimicrobial resistance or biosecurity. So, in a general term, the control of animal diseases. Of course, all that healthy livestock are happened. Yesterday, I guess. But there are other ones. You have another thematic network, so that is done, and then we say on biosecurity, only biosecurity, biosecurity. Once you have cross actions, you like innovate, optimizing veterinary antimicrobial treatment or better biosecurity. You have also a bit like having no giant remove the project from the core of the board, using great extracts as antimicrobial analytics. You have an infrastructure like the environment, working with animals. And I mentioned here a project just to say that even in this project is looking at African swine fever disease, which is far away from bacterial disease. It's working also on biosecurity. The biosecurity you put in place for certain disease may well be beneficial that is partly for other diseases that could be bacterial. And also we know very well, not only expect but on a number of viral diseases where biologics are not efficient, but a number of complications and bacterial infections coming in addition, secondary infections from viral disease. So we should not think of this of bacterial disease. And this is also relevant for vaccine. And also NERANET, ICAP, that is a network of funders that launched boards of transnational projects, and they have 2 projects on the first one, for instance, being farm, project on biomarkers and microbiome farms for management. So I did not say exactly how many euros this represents, but we are not far from 60, 80 million euros of projects doing this anyways. I did not mention here the project. Next slide. Now, if we look at AMR in a one perspective, these were shortly the projects, the acknowledged domain, were also the environment. And this is new strategic approach to pharmaceuticals and the environment, adopted in 2019 with a number of actions that were basically put into place, and the latest progress report where it stands. And looking at residues from pharmaceuticals, then I think there will be more and more actions taking place in the environment. So, next slide. Now, on the public health pillar of One Health, the joint programming initiative on antimicrobial resistance. It's international, it goes beyond the EU. Now you see that Canada, South America, there, which started from the public health accord, but progressively went to One Health actions. The GPI is this a network of again program managers in the member states and in other countries that decide to launch common actions. They can launch boards for construction, but they can do other things. Next slide, please. And you see here that they develop their research and strategic research and innovation agenda that goes into all aspects from therapeutics, diagnostics, surveillance, transmission, environment, and interventions. Next slide. Why I present this is and why I said that it's moving a little bit now towards more of a awareness approach. That, for instance, they had a goal of One Health intervention, event, and a goal reduce the use, reduce the development and transmission through an RNet supported, which this project, for instance, c'est as a project selecting efficient farm-level antimicrobial stewardship prevention from a wellness perspective. For fish stock AMR, fish therapy to reduce AMR antibacterial spread from a wellness perspective. This was important. Just to say that even starting from the very list, network, they started to move also from the then there were other goals. In total, 125 million invested. Not all covered. Next slide. And this is a big private partnership that they have in the last 2020, and they will have in the Horizon Europe with another acronym and another focus. But there, just to say that they have huge programs to try and trigger innovative antimicrobial. It's very, very difficult, even in the medical domain. Not say for industry to invest in new antimicrobial things. I'm not very optimistic. But at least in the medical domain, there are a lot of activities there. I want to mention that we have health and emergency response authority that has been created. That we also do developing a pushing for development in the medical. Next slide. Now moving quickly to Horizon Europe. We are not in Horizon Europe, Horizon 2020 and 2020. We are now in the second year of Horizon Europe, and the structure of the program is not very different, let's say, from Horizon 2020. In the health, which is cluster 1, 8 billion euros, and in the cluster where I work, cluster 6, on food, bioenergy, natural resources, agriculture, and environment. In general, 9 billion euros. And it's there that you will see a number of actions plans related to antimicrobial resistance. Next slide. Just to say here what we had from the veterinary sector, what we have put in the first 2 years of Horizon Europe, which is related to animal health or sustainable livestock production. We had a topic in 2021 on animal welfare, on vaccines, and awareness approach to food and nutrition security and sustainable agriculture. This last one was Russian Africa. And in 2022, we opened biosecurity, international research on infectious animal disease and information on infectious animal disease. So we have quite a few topics, and you see the budget there, so significant investment there. Next slide, please. Now, what I want to mention is an initiative that we are working on, that we are active with, which should be a big initiative, a partnership, public-private partnership, essentially, a co-funded partnership. With Organized in Europe, there was an idea to restructure the landscape of our research partnerships that we had in 2024. They had it ceased. The Commission wanted to have fewer and bigger partnerships. And the landscape was structured around three types of partnerships: co-programmed, partnerships; co-funded, which are basically essentially public partnerships; and the institutional partnerships like IMI. What we want to do is to develop a partnership of animals and welfare. Please. This is the landscape of partnerships that should normally come right in the first 4 years of Horizon Europe. And here is animals and welfare in green. There are 49 such partnerships that are planned for the first 4 years of Horizon. And one which is there is called One Year of Microbial System. Animals and welfare is in the first system. Next slide, please. Okay, why we think it's important to have such a partnership? We think that, that no single member state has the capacity on its own to address challenging space, like developing new vaccines or improving existing ones, diagnostic tools, understanding epidemic objectives, etc. Many diseases, lack of resources. We see also that there is a certain level of duplication of work on countries, especially on the disease. Capacity there in the countries. There is, in our mind, an insufficient animal to utilize for investment in certain areas. Resources to do research and improve on all these sectors. We have increased needs for data sharing and data management, and we need also to improve the continuum from research and innovation to having products near the market for going to high technology readiness. So we think it's time to work with time. Come such an idea of partnership, partnership. Next slide, please. So this is the scope that is proposed for this partnership: infectious animal diseases, including impact on public health, so that's where it's AMR and zoonosis, and also animal welfare. Cover livestock, terrestrial and aquatic, also wildlife and companion animals by element. And the aim is to enforce the fairness, promote aspects of animal welfare, generate innovative technologies and products, support evidence-based policy making, and steps in leverage resources in the system. Impact is there, improve the socioeconomic and environmental impact of animal disease, impact into animal welfare, society to the farms, safety and benefits. We have some discussions with the industry, and we still have to see whether this, how far this partnership will be open to international. Next slide will show very quickly. This is more or less the diagram, which are the general, specific, and operational objectives of these partnerships. You see that you have the vaccines, achievements, immunomodulators, access to the many vaccines. But one important dimension we need is we have this objective of socioeconomic aspect and impact of animal health and welfare. The question is responding to these studies here. approximately one of the four specific objectives mentioned in the prospect collaboration in the management. We will not have like managed BGP, the full balanced network of public health, environmental health, and animal health that is not feasible with from just six, but we want to foster this collaboration. Collaboration with, next slide please, and it's finished. One that I mentioned earlier, another partnership that is in pipeline, which is the one of microbial because we want to expand forward. Partnership on animals is planned for 2023. And here is what is expected from this partnership and SDMR. The boundaries and the strategic research and information agenda for this planned partnership is not yet there. It will be developed in the course of this year. But certainly we are in discussion with them to see that there is no as little overlap as possible, that there is no more than the actions that we get left between the two partnerships and cooperating as much as possible when those partnerships are coming and
then some information, but also of really interesting, say, impact reasons, and I want to go on there briefly. When you say that actually the AMR is perceived as something closer to public health rather than animal health, it's so true, but also so curious because you think about that the Commission is trying to tackle this AMR issue through the One Health approach. If you think about the One Health approach, actually started as a way, as an approach to zoonosis. It's quite curious because it's also true that One Health had several evolution, even with COVID, it was again back in the way concept of One Health. So it's absolutely interesting, but I wasn't accurate before because actually the round of keynote speakers is not over. Of course, we had the maker, we had the commission, we had the presentation of some product, but of course we need the voice of partners. And we have with us Alberto Alanis from
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Martin. Thank you for the question. My name is Antonio Taparas. I'm the producer in Portugal, and I'm the president of the Big League Group of Companies. So I'm going to be very brief, but only to try to give you our point of view, the point of view of the producers on this project design. For us, this project is very important. And why it is very important is because big meat is always under attack. It's from politicians who want more intensive production. It's from NGOs who knows nothing about the model of production, but want to say to attack us to have time from the media side. It's the YARC with this famous report on cancer. We have all. And we have the challenge. We have the farm to fork strategy, which is a huge challenge for us. We are always under attack on the point of view of animal welfare, on antibiotics, and of course on health. What happened now is that we need this project to have scientific opinions to show the politicians what is the reality. Because what we see nowadays is mostly of the proposals we have from the Commission are proposals based on political decision and not scientific decision. For instance, I give you a quick example. Now, the last proposal on gas emissions. What's that? It's political. no scientific basis to go on. It's only 100%. So we need absolutely this project to have a base, a scientific base, to have, I think this, if I don't believe this, I lose my mind. Well, as I said, we need absolutely scientific basis to show the consumer our model of production, which is very, very important, and also to show the politicians what is the reality of our production. But these are antibiotics. As I said, antibiotics is one topic of farming. Antibiotics. Okay. I have to say something. For us, the big producers, we don't want to use any antibiotics at all. We don't want it because we have pigs because we live. But don't forget, we have the pigs to make money. If we use antibiotics, first we have to pay the antibiotics. It's another extra cost. And second, worse than that, is that if we use antibiotics, it's because we have some disease in the herd. And if we have a disease in the herd and sick pigs in the herd, we are losing money immediately. Even if we use the best antibiotic of the world, we are losing. So we are not interested in using it. But we are always under attack, saying that we use a lot of it. We have already shown in the past that, for instance, the ban of use of antibiotics as growing factor. It was 20 years ago. We have accepted for sure. But don't forget that we have lost competitiveness in the world market because the Americans did not stop using the antibiotics as growing factor. And we compete with them with the world market. But we have perfectly accepted. Now it's all this legislation about not use antibiotics as the prophylactic way. We have accepted. So for sure we show that we need that. But I have to say that it is very important to have and to pass this idea that we don't want to use antibiotics. But not to use antibiotics, what have we do? Okay, it's a multi-factor issue because it's the buildings, it's the management, it's the feed, it's the genetic, it's a multi-factor issue. So we need this kind of project to show us what will be the best way, the best direction not to use antibiotics. And Mr. Mark, yes, said something also important. Don't forget that the antibiotics is no more important for the pharmaceutical industry. They are not investing in any antibiotics no more. So when we speak about resistance, the resistance have no use antibiotics. It's all the old ones, because now it's much more used to have medicines for liver, for Alzheimer, for cancer. Antibiotics, not so, they don't make so much money for the pharmaceutical. So this is another point of view. Well, I don't want to read very long because we are going to discuss this matter, but I have one final point that I want to make. This is very important to have this kind of projects, but we must use all the money from Horizon to Europe, Horizon to for these projects scientific with the farmers, not to pay the professors of the university, like in the past. Most of the money goes to the universities to pay theoretical investigation and to pay the salaries of the professors. Please approve more projects like this design where we are, where the producers are, because if we insist to pay only the professors in the big universities, I'm sorry, we got no money. That's all.
Okay, so we move on to actually the real fund, the actual fund, the same person that we already. Yes. To kick things off, I'd like to start with some kind of remarks or takes on what actually he designed for this recommendation. So if you have one take on one more take on this draft recommendation, and let's start with
Well, it's linked to your question, I think, to the last comment. Last year. Because just to say that we have more and more multi-actor approach projects. That we want to follow. Horizon 2020 we started and we gone with Horizon 2020. I think as you see something we were the first ones who introduced in our work these kind of users and actors designing I think at this stage, I wonder if it's not something like projects that are multi not always founders,
But after approved those with the farmers, not with universities, have made some contracts with 2 or 3 farmers. Okay, sorry.
We see it officers in universities.
For sure, we have to do it.
But on the recommendation, it's linked with the link to practices. Very much this. It's not only about this. If we look at the national action plans, there are some action plans where a lot is in the hands of industry, private sector, actors, and some have taken regulatory steps. And I have no assessment of each action plan, but I think different action plans, different types of actions at work, they are working. And so, but still, I think practices are an essential element. We know quite a lot of it. We don't know everything. I'm not sure we know what's the share of use of microbial quantitative contribution to the use. But anyway, we know that the more you use in the sector, the more you will have an AMR or the cost of the linked from animals to environment. The practices are certainly important. The awareness, I very much over awareness. I know it's difficult to organize it. That recommendation is welcome. How to make it really operational, but not easy because it's quite complex. It's a concept. Some put plant health in one else, so usually as a vet, I think we started from the veterinary idea, with zoonosis, but not for plant health. Speak about one welfare, part of one health. Quite easy, and there are certain silos or
things that we should be done at least now our broad is current.
I think we need to see where awareness approach is essential. If we think about antimicrobial resistance, where it's really important is to monitor surveillance and the understanding of the pathways so that you really spend exposure to years, because if you have one year, you have one bigger approach. Now, when it comes to action, developing vaccines or anyone, I think there you may not need to have the events and the environmentalists and the doctors together to work on developing. So we need to see where this financial is that ecology, phosphorus, and surveillance elements where it's absolutely needed. Even this to put in practice, I remember that Denmark working on the 748 it was in Denmark as soon as it's my understanding a few years later when I this was the standard. That was in 2000. It was still the BSC, Salmonella, because this went not over. So it doesn't come visibly that this kind of structure is pressure. Now we have got it over there. But that's something that we push one else concept to some kind of internationalization, especially the public health. But recommendations very welcome. Some may be more difficult.
I saw that you were taking a lot of notes of action. What's your take on that?
Well, I think it's very interesting in terms of, certainly, I just hope for, I think that much. Maybe I should not have known it before now. The change of farm level, I think that is like ultimately the only change of farm level we achieve. I think that the focus around the delivery model at the farm level in the ultimate result is very important. The approaches that's mentioned, I think, certainly I'd be a big fan of some of what was mentioned there. But I suppose my own background in Ireland would be what we would call discussion groups. You can groups of farmers together and collectively debate different issues, come up with practical solutions, and then look to implement them. I think if you're to get change at farm level with first point, first objective was there, that kind of discussion with about collective farmers together model is very important because then you get buy-in that this can be done. One farmer to change, the other farmers can see that we can do that here too. So that sort of approach I think is very important. I think the multi-action farm health means. I think that's very important in the same vein that I suppose the conversation here was like economics of it has to work. Briefly, in terms of the antimicrobial resistance point, I've seen Russian farmers work up and down here. It has touched on the importance of the issue and the need. They will take the responsibility and they take up the challenge and try and solve it. And I think if you have that multidisciplinary approach, there are people who will challenge the farm and find out the issues that work and that makes a change. And that to me is so important. Farmers with the willingness to embrace the technology of the knowledge, and then you need to be on the other side and challenge them to push the boundaries, if you like, and say it's possible. So I think those two particular things are particularly important. The idea of the coach, it's part of that discussion with multiple levels of facilitator. I just think it's important that while there is the coach, or while there are the disciplinary things and challenge the opinion, I think the ownership of the aims and objectives has to remain with the farmers who are, if they don't own it, they won't do it. Anyway, I think at least it's a more tariff situation. I mean, certainly, by and large, they did just my observations overall, but as regards to one health approach, I think we can overcomplicate. At the end of the day, working at animal medicine and human medicine interact and the importance of the synergies that neglect them on one side, the risks that against that the neglect. So I think certainly, maybe proposals make sense. I suppose making sure there was a common rule made as regards some. I think if you do farming at the center, will have a kind of academic concept on one side and a lack of implementation. It do have to be.
I saw you for the point and I'm okay to what the farm would say about the
involvement of farmers in that protocol, what's your take on the recommendation?
Look, I think it's very important to involve the farmers and to have a very good dissemination of this information. To have an idea of the project, we are now we now have a reflection group. We want to propose an action plan for the near future of the pig production, and this design will be included in the future. For sure, will be included in this action. But it's very important because the farmers sometimes they think that they know everything. I'm going to tell you, I'm 66 years old. When I was born, my father had pigs. But at 15, I started the farm. And the antibiotics we had at the time was the terminicin from Pfizer, was oxytetracycline. Okay? And it was what we discussed was, okay, if a pig is sick, we give a dose of terminicin. But if we give 2 doses, much better. And with 3 doses, oh, the animal will be fantastic. And that was 50 years ago, it was like that. So it's all into for sure, it was 50 years ago. It's all a story to show how important it is to pass this information and this conclusion through the farmers. That's what our industry said. Absolutely agree with you. We must make the farmers change opinion, bring down, and apply these conclusions of design. It's very important.
So, if you need, I would like to also ask you, there was a very interesting definition on the Commission side, mentioned the targets of the farm for strategy. I want to ask you, what's your take on the targets when it comes to one of the system? Return the question on and then your institution
on farm to farms. Well, this is the target is to reduce 50% of the. I can tell you, I personally agree. It's the only thing what I agree absolutely in the farm to farm. But with this, I agree absolutely with this, and I think we can perfectly achieve this. I think we can because now we are making big investments in new farms, regulating the farms due to the sanitary conditions on African swine fever. We must have a high biosecurity in the herds. That is something that we know what is biosecurity because we have experience for our Spain. We have eradicated African swine fever with biosecurity. We know what to do. We know what to do. And I can tell you another story. Two weeks ago, I received an Austrian delegation of farmers and of slaughterhouses in Portugal. And they want to see a slaughterhouse and to see a farm. And I told them, okay, if we go to the slaughterhouse, we cannot enter the farm. Security. But I can show you from the outside what is a farm, what is the biosecurity. And I showed them the farm have already 25 years, not the new. I want to show you something. And when they saw the barriers we have, the conditions we have for biosecurity, the question was, is this mandatory in Portugal? It was the question. I said, yes, it is mandatory in Portugal. I couldn't tell you that. So you see, we have all these steps. We have done a lot of things. And for sure, if we improve our facilities, if we improve everything, we improve the health of the pigs, we improve animal welfare, it's only animal health of the pigs and the reduced cost of antibiotics.
And comment also.
I'm actually, I don't think we're here to ask Commissioner Rowley. I think there is, let's say, 50% or 20% or 80%, the significant scope to reduce the level of the antibiotic usage. Like, I'm thinking 3 or 4 areas. The use of vaccine is a significant area where I need some personal response for different vaccination for the risk of disease. That's one. A hygiene point that's already been made is the second one. And also then there's another person there. But there's just the management is on that bit, I suppose. You know, the example I gave at the start with catches. How farm practices that reduce this proportion of the stress on animals by the nature reduce the risk of disease. And there's so many things that we do in so many different areas that will be in prevention. I suppose one one is through prevention of preventative practices that we can reduce the need. Plenty of possibilities there in relation. I mean, one interesting thing that's it's back to point about changing onsets. I think it's interesting to see how COVID and how easy it is to transfer like germs during COVID. People just simple things like washing the hands. How much that actually breaks to and so, you know, disease spread and bacteria spread is that simple. So simple practices make a difference. Just one example, seen as one that I like using stories as examples. Like at home farm, I use practical experience again, because I think practical experience is very important. We have a situation where we can sell calves. There was this individual who would come in a calf to go from farm to buy the calves. They come in and walk around those calves. The same birds goes in the farm before and the farm before the farm before. We categorize them, do not put any certificate with any other calves because we don't want. I'm like, what's the problem? What's your problem? That's the reality of this, the situation that we have to deal with. I think we have to change those mindsets. COVID is an interesting example. I think we realize how subtle this situation is. And I think we can get the spirit of the approach here, where you're engaging with people and you're kind of informing people, and then letting them make up their own stuff. Rather than behaving, people will embrace that. And at the end of the day, as was said by the gentleman here, at the end of the day, it's money in the pocket. So it wasn't both. Like farmers and farmers, because they like language is respect. But at a principle level, you as an economic sector, it's just that the coach that works with them. That's a very good point.
Your fellow clients for 2 times, so there's actually the next to defend your future bond, to tell us some underlying
Second, to tell us this, well, this story, I think the holistic and then multidisciplinary and coach, not looking at specific, only one of the aspects. Maybe you look at vaccines. I know an expert when we were working on the study. Yeah, vaccines will work only if there is a certain level of vaccine. If it's full of salmonella, you can vaccinate against salmonella. It will not work. So I mean, we cannot say vaccine will be a solution. Hygiene will be the solution. Management, no, it's a combination of the aspects that we need to influence. That's important. Now, on the realism or feasibility of this comment, I think very much for the reasons that the number of countries that include plastic use don't seem to have major. And there are many countries which are much higher than the level of the country. I think this 50% target doesn't, my understanding, doesn't say for each and every member state, starting from level X, it will have to be twice as little as this. Again, it's the EU target. So there are some countries that will have to use more than others, as long as So I think there's a reasonable flexibility to reach it, and I think it's quite feasible. Of course, if there will be problems on the way, the last thing is to come back to farmers. I think the recommendations, that's it, actually recommendation from some fit quite well with the idea of PIP, the idea of the professional group, with the idea of the policy with the advisory services, this dimension, so this system of operational groups services should normally contribute and facilitate support with farmers, advisors, and other actors.
And you know, I just want to say about the stuff, you know, also some counties have already wanted so I would like to know from the point of view of the commission, how important and how to share these best practices, but at the same time, how to best communicate with the consumers and the general public to explain the importance of a response from the law. So basically, two way of communication. One among member states to try favor best practices, and one with general public to share the importance of the stuff.
Globally on AMR, I think there are a lot of actions, communication with the AMR awareness day and the AMR in general. Now, where is the voice of the animals second to this? Don't know if we are heard as much as the medical and that's focused in the AMR. So maybe we should. It's a question. The recruiter should be more information what is going on. That's why in my slide I said, look at the S9 report, look at the JACFP report. That says basically, yes, now we are using the new level of consumption is lower than the limit. And it has decreased by 40% last year. So probably we need to much more to quantity balanced landscape of precision. Now, the type of projects like design, thematic network, which practice abstract communication, these kind of projects are the tools which could be used with the idea of this point. Same day, we have service project, internet, website, relevant to network, projects, actors. There are actions there. What is the impact? It will be soon also a role about it. I wouldn't say there is no action. The impact we should
I think it's very important to live with human health and human. Because for one antibiotic that was used a lot was colistin. Colistin now is no longer authorized because of the same colistin is the last antibiotic for you. My wife is a medical. I discussed that subject with her, and he told me, look, that colistin is the last antibiotic we have, because colistin has a lot of secondary effects. So, for me, in my life, I have to prescribe, I think, once colistin in 40 years of medicine, because there's a lot of, but what happens is that the pharmaceutical companies have no antibiotics at all 20 years ago. So the ones who have is now, and the doctors have to give to antibiotics that they don't want to give to the humans due to the secondary effects. And we, on our side, colistin was very useful, very useful pigment, and now it's bad. Okay, then you have we have accepted that of colistin. Okay.
Colin wants to see somebody with some plasmids, right? Position, released on humans.
Yeah, I suppose that's pretty much how it's going to go around. Look, we can get, and certainly there's no one that speaks to the need to restrict these like that. Particularly certain aspects of vital. And when it comes down to this, we can debate what should or shouldn't be on that list. Sometimes I think certainly we just have to be conscious. Sometimes we can be open to there, but at the same time, there is definitely take second. But I think the broader point is not so much. When we submit production and it's not because things were bad, we take that. It's because practices change and we need for if we can focus primary drive of our ambition to actually like changing the approaches on farming. I just throw one word down here, stress. You reduce the level of stress. You reduce the need of. So in every way that you manage the environment, you use vaccines, the hygiene, all those things, they play such an important part. And it's certainly not to take away from the antibiotics, just be careful that you don't undermine animal health at the same time. I think the primary drive has to be building the standard. It's not just, I'm not questioning this, there's always more approach. And at the end of the day, if you reduce the stress levels, the animal does better, the animal performs better, you frankly make more money. So, like, it's a win-win situation, and that's what we have to do. If I was to get out of this, I don't believe it's as much about what to do with the brand. That's a very important element. For 80% or 90%, can be
for between now and the conference, questions or any questions to our okay, so can you introduce yourself?
These are all going to the UK. I want to visit the point about farmers involved in projects more effectively. It's probably a question on how do you fund farmers in projects with the subsidy receivers and avoid the overly burden, administrative burden that it is to put these projects together and everything.
That would be a question for the executive agency that they can with. I think there are solutions. I know that there are solutions, but we do not expect each farmer to do any activity, join the consortium of the new projects. There are solutions of acting, make things easier, let's say, and I think that big nice measures it's possible, but that is actually complex to bring field actors, individual actors like farmers, companies, big projects. Most of them not but it's certainly an issue. I mentioned that I think we have been thinking about really bringing some innovative approaches in the more pilot project that can be done through the actions. all these options. Usually, quite often, we have EU limits, representing farmers or other actors that we need to manage. This is now we are also working on legal maps. We have some projects that could be actually we have a partnership on this is easy.
Something in whispering is here on the left. So, of course, I actually think it's quite simple. Simpler to people to spread. We had a conversation here on front row at start, but Animal Health Ireland is essentially state-sponsored organization set up to help the rollout of vaccines, the rollout of let's say, that's PPE, things like that. And farmers engaged with this, those things quite a lot. The example I used there, discussion groups. Farmers engaged in those. So if the model is farmer friendly, and if it's pointed out to farmers in a straightforward way, that it's probably in their own interest. They engage very, very quick. And just get a confirm and it'll be a tour of 20 or 30 discussion groups and you'll see the robust and hard hitting the dates that go with them and how much farmers buy in. And certainly it's a model, but it doesn't take anything. But you'll find the best farmers job. The best farmers change the theory, the rest of the the model of the farmers really not that more than buying into it. I may have to apologize for both.
No, very quickly. The way to involve is through the association, the national union. It's the way to involve. We have a project, we call the project that we involve 19 countries, 90 associations from different countries, and NFU was that. The UK was that.
Thank you. Any other question? Yeah,
The question is more a comment on what is being said. I completely agree with both. We look at the resistance. See that, for example, for some species, some diseases, sometimes it's too hard to use it. In the other hand, they still use a lot of antimicrobial. So it's very important to exchange practices. How this was possible, like they explained, but this has to be on the ground. And for example, we have a water project on the ground regarding how to transport animals in that state. And what really made this success is that very long countries taught in local language, we know the actual and they saw what were the problems that they faced and take solutions to that. But it means that we really need to go to different countries, have translations, have their people facilitate, and better also a lot of money necessary for that. If you just have best practices in English, you will become
This is what I was coming to. So you talk about a cost. I think it's possibly the best investment because it will get the objective here is disseminate information and it's you for it. But that I mean is apologies for me.
I was on the draft project. And I went to pick up on one of the recommendations that you did, and that was about how the multi-factor approach maybe perhaps extended or further intensified from creating advisory services that possibly try to tackle the with the problems at the farm in a more, well, let's say, holistic, systemic way, and possibly how, like, in your opinion, how you could possibly create eventually public partnerships that can stimulate the creation of these platforms, or even perhaps create separate action or funding, perhaps even for the setting up of these initiatives.
We have to see whether these initiatives could be embedded into a research and innovation framework. It has to be in advisory level, has to have a component. If it's in the advisory services, then we bring it outside the generalization into other types of actions that would be maybe funded from the state leadership. Because in the CAP, they are more enforced to the advisory service. Now, how the advisory services are organized around the multidisciplinary approach and be sustained from other programs and also because when I say we will not living labs, for instance, in our some partnerships and initiatives, there will always be a research dimension in it, not only advising. Because then it's not a research or innovation. Example like you examine at the activities to see how it fits to the different funds. How we infrastructures, even other. All these is a component.
Okay, guys. Thank you. Thanks. No, you have a question.
If you have time. It's a bit general.
No, I mean, if you want to ask a question. Remember that people want to somewhat.
I'm with a lot of friends that used to work from the pharma industry. And my question is regarding data management, how to push toward harmonization of AMR and human and animal data across EU countries to have like a common database that could bring better.
We asked the
Last question. You said already one else operationalizing is easy on data. I think that's probably the maximum one of the program objectives that the partnership one else AMR is having. Logically, for me, the surveillance elements or monitoring elements and component or managed approach are important. One else AMR partnership should take care of this. What we want to do in the partnership anymore is doing data, vending, data sharing, data on animal health. Not necessarily always. That's the we need to bring the different factors. We need to harmonize, we need to get to a system where people are willing to share. Also, some research data, those partnerships are research. Now, there is already a system of data collection and data sharing between EFSA, UNM, ECDC, or the medical data. But for the moment, it's not harmonized to the extent that you can link the two sectors together because the microorganisms on which data is actually not necessarily the same. So there are certain improvements that could be done in the time of the perspective and the sharing. Now, if I remember where we see animal health law and the new veterinary product legislation, there will be ways and means of harmonizing and enforcing the monitoring of use. The remark, for the moment, what is correct, very much on food. Very nice. That really was the action that we had combined with is in the pipeline or could be the pipeline in the future. That's the other problem. Not necessarily know how the pathways actually AMR to the environment. So yes, because at least research data monitoring research should be better. And in the partnership that we can work on this kind of cases, right? Link to research and you see how it can be presented in the body general studies. That's the kind of the partnership anyway is very clear. We look at the work on this, which linguistics. That's something we can do there in the research project for the morning.
Actually, as we speak, there's a conference of the other part of the process. Don't forget on this, on the environment plan. But it's the year in 15 minutes and start with it for a company refresh. So other part on actually more than stuff. And I thank our partners for the so we're back again. We had a very fun break. Yeah, actually, this is a very good segue on what we talked about in the first time, particularly on this one concept. We actually started as a veteran concept and then evolved to several evolution, let's say, and we can say that we kind of lost the initial initial evaluation of what one approach was. Again, very limited zoonosis to infection share between humans and animals, and at the same time, so we're kind of coming back to the egg. So we're having very distinguished panelists today with a lot of expertise in the field of animal health. And I'm going to start with Alain Cantalou. Alain Cantalou is the Secretary General of the European Farmers Animal Health Services Federation. He's a graduate of Sciences Po. He also mastered in economics at Paris. And he was also auditor at the Institute of huge experience. Congrats for your career. It's really impressive. Really impressive. And he's still working to strengthening this partnership between farmers, vets, competent authorities, also based on his previous experience in all of these fields of animal health. So I'd like to start with you, Alain. If you can give us an introduction on the topic today, that is basically stakeholders working together towards a more resilient and harmonized One Health approach.
Thank you. Thank you for this long introduction. First, I'd like to congratulate the organizer, especially Ola, because it's not a simple courtesy. It's a true congratulation because we need to testify about the involvement of farmers organizations, and other actors of animal health sector in this fight against AMR. We are not coming from nowhere. As we saw, it was explained before, we made a lot of progress against AMR, but the threat is still present, and we have to maintain our mobilization. Here, I guess we are all involved in this mobilization inside of a platform, IPOMA, and also, of course, in our own organization. So, for us, this fight, for us, FESAS, and members of FESAS, this fight is important and crucial for at least three reasons. First, we are, already said here and in other places, we have to maintain an important, vital tool inside of the toolbox of veterinarian. Antimicrobial are absolutely necessary. But we have to continue to reduce the use as possible, where it will be possible, and to better target the use. So we need to develop, manage the use, we need to develop risk management, and it's one aspect of design. We say the most important aspect of design, to manage the risk and to develop prevention. I want just to add, prevention must be individual and collective. It's important because if one farmer fails, it's not only his farm which will be exposed, but all the farms of his neighborhood. So we have to mobilize all farms. The second point is about One Health approach. Of course, we have to be mobilized because we have responsibility of the use of antimicrobial in the farms and to manage the risk. Again, about the development of AMR. So, this issue is very important and could have serious consequences for human health and environment. Here, as I said, we made a lot of progress, but we are still under the pressure of the public opinion, which is not true, but which is existing today, and unfortunately, I'm afraid, which is still present in the future. So we have to maintain our involvement in the management of the use of antimicrobials, but also we have to communicate about our actions, because we need to bring the truth about the work that we are doing for. The last point I would like to underline is about the duty. The duty that we have for the future generations. We have to be sure that in the future, the effectiveness of antimicrobial will stay effective. So, I think it's not only a European problem, we need to respect this duty everywhere in the world.
Maybe turn it off.
Just trying to improve the sound, but maybe I made it quite worse. So sorry.
The duty is not only for European farmers, not only for European animal health actors, it's a duty everywhere in the world. It's important, and we have to think both on middle-term target and long-term target. For me, the middle term is continue to raise, and we already spoke with design some tools to improve and to develop for this target. But for long term, we have to think also about the adaptability of our activities, because the risk will move, will evolve, and also the knowledge and the scientific progress could help us. So we have to be flexible for the future also, but keeping in mind the duty to maintain the effectiveness of antimicrobial.
Thank you for this introduction. I was actually talking about your country with all our panelists, quite jealous about their expertise and experience. I'm glad to introduce you, Nancy Lebrun.
That's fine.
Okay. I always try to see since I always try to get on the internet the correct pronunciation. This case, I don't like anything apart from the things we play, or almost. So Nancy, she's a veteran veterinarian graduate from Kent University. She's now the executive director of the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe, and her entire career is on antimicrobial resistance, with a very huge focus on antimicrobial resistance. So I'm really glad to have you in this panel to share your experience with our audience here and on the internet. So I'd like to ask the same question. So what are your introductory remarks before jumping on a very specific topic with the question from my side?
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here with you. Actually, much has been said already. Indeed, as FE, we represent all the veterinarians in Europe. So we have members from 38 countries. And we very much believe that we have to fight, and the only way to fight is in one health way, and also based on scientific information and in partnership. FE was together with FESAS and Animal Health Europe, one of the founding partners of EFIUMA, European Platform for Responsible Use of Medicine, in the meantime, 12 years ago. And I think 15 even. So I think one of the reasons we have this good success now, I think EFIUMA has a little bit. I will talk again, of course, also founding partner, yes, and in the meantime, many more partners. As we heard before, there's no miracle solution for that part. Yeah, if we had a miracle solution, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't have all these conferences. I always think how more I learn about MR, how more I realize how complex it is, and especially the transfer between use in humans and to the resistance transfer. It's a hugely complex area. So I think it's important that we have all this research. It's crucial, and projects like this really contribute to that. There's no miracle solution, but the best way is prevention, preventing diseases. So you don't have to treat by changing practices, changing housing, changing management, getting better feeding, amplifying security. All these steps are needed to do it. There's no one solution. Banning antimicrobials also will not do it. It's important to use them prudently and responsibly. But even if we keep animals in the best way possible, still at certain moments they can get bacteria. So we will always need, in certain cases, antimicrobials. More of the global dimension was said before, very important. We're not living in isolation, and indeed, the EU has the strictest rules of the world, but then it depends also on the member states on how to implement it, as it was said earlier. And I think that's important to keep on focusing that we don't live in isolation. We have to look at the rest of the world. Now, what do we think as FE, as veterinarians? We could do further, and we certainly also believe 50% is reachable, but we still have to move forward, is a couple of things. First one is what I said earlier, to look at what is the low-hanging fruits, in which countries, in which sectors do we still have high antimicrobial use. And the new regulation will help us with that, because before we only measured sales, now we're also going to start to measure use per species. So we will have more information there, and then we can really target the places where we use most, and that's the way we can further bring it down. We also believe that more need for, and it was already mentioned before, better diagnostic tools, which are affordable, effective, and preferably on the farm, very easy to do, and that would help a lot. Another thing, a third thing, exchange of surveillance data. It was also already mentioned several times. We have good antimicrobial use data and also human use in both sectors. But on antimicrobial resistance, we don't have surveillance data for veterinary pathogens. There is a lot of testing done, but it's not collected together. This would really be a good, another good thing to move forward. Alternative therapies was mentioned before, and then another point. Important more research on the transmission of between species, between humans, and there also communication, because some studies on it which show that antimicrobial use in animals contributes very much to antimicrobial resistance in animals, and they also contribute partly to antimicrobial resistance in humans. But the biggest burden to antimicrobial resistance in humans is the use in humans. But we don't have good communication material, and we need better studies, and we need better communication on that. And I think that's the biggest point from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, actually. Several points I think we can jump in the course of our panel. But I want to move to Roxanne Pelle from Animal Health Europe. She's the Secretary General of Animal Health Europe, and it's for also one of the. She was there since the creation of it. So she actually has a very important task now, because there's no miracle solution. At least the recipe. Give us a silver line, give us something that like a positive sign that we can look at with confidence when it comes to bringing about everyone.
We start at the end of my presentation. It is very tough, in fact, to be talking about after my colleagues who are very, very clear in their messaging. But maybe just to put back everything we've been saying in our heads, and like facts. Number one is that animals get sick too, whether we like it or not. With all the biosecurity, it's like when you want to take care of yourselves or your family, you drink orange juice, you make sure you buy something for your stomach, but you can still get sick. So with bacteria. So that means you need a solution. So there is no, to our knowledge to this date, a replacement for certain bacteria. You need the antibacterial for humans and for animals. A second fact is that if a healthy animal, however, does not need to be treated. The fact, you said it, the animal is doing well. But then what do you do if you want to really, because unfortunately someone to push stopping use of antimicrobials in animals in general. And imagine a world where animals were not to be given antimicrobials anymore. What could happen? What could be the worst thing that could happen? Well, the animal gets sick. And if the animal gets sick, what happens? Does he get into the food chain? No. If you don't put a sick animal in the food chain. Does he transmit diseases to the humans? Most probably, yes. We heard 60, 75, I think all these numbers are zoonotic diseases that you were mentioning. Does that have an increase also on the environment? Yes, because a sick animal, and science proves it, increases greenhouse gas emissions. An animal is sick, increases and emits more greenhouse gas emissions than a healthy animal. You also have vector-borne diseases, not only the direct contact between a human and an animal. You have the risk that the mosquito, which is the most deadly weapon on Earth, sorry, heard that not for me, can transmit also diseases from a sick animal to humans. Then you also increase, you also, of course, as a result, reduce the health of humans. And also, here I'm talking about pets, because our industry also takes pets. You need to make sure that you keep pet animals healthy, because if you have an unhealthy animal, it can also have a contagion with the pets. Contagious to humans. And last but not least is also microbial resistance, which is a cornerstone of One Health. So these 7 examples I gave you was in fact looking through the angle of animal health. How does that impact, or what impact does it have on One Health? I demonstrated at home, as I tried, the impact it has on the human health and the impact it has on the environment. And this is how we in animal health will receive the concept of One Health. It's these 3 healths together. One is being closely interlinked with the other. And by working only on one, you will not achieve healthy environment or healthy humans. It's a circle. Just that you know, at global level, because we present animal health in 2 words, we're the industry. We talk a lot about industry. So my members, we have manufacture medicines and vaccines to heal and to prevent diseases in animals. And lately, they have also extended a lot of their work to diagnostics, to digital solutions, and digital monitoring of health. So we are more than just medicine. There's really a bigger concept of what animal health is and how we do it. So one last thing just to tell you what our goal is. We've committed globally, we have an action plan how industry itself can support responsible use and reducing the need for antibiotics in animals. And we've committed, for example, training vets, developing new vaccines and diagnostics, and also developing new feed solutions and funding R&D amongst others. That's what Thank you.
Thank you so much. You bet not getting into this anything to do, but no, but I mean, again, I'm not sure it's so big on this topic that I take for granted and everyone knows. Okay, thank you, Roxanne. I still have to find the line in your, yeah, okay, we're gonna get there. Perfect. So, we have seen at the beginning certain presentation from Erwin on the design project. So I would like to know from you your take on the draft recommendations. If you have anything that you want to point out or highlight based on what actually what is being discussed even yes about this project and stuff
the conclusions and recommendations are, for me, totally online with the concept of one approach. I don't want to develop about that. I want just highlight the very interesting recommendation about transparency and comparability. Because we know the situation is very different between member states, maybe between species, and we need to know more about the situation and to identify where it will be possible to progress. I said before, we have to reduce the use of antimicrobial, but where it's possible. So we have to identify where it's possible. And we have also to identify where we can make more progress about the prevention for some typical aspects. I think about trade, for instance, but the trade is not the same when we are thinking about bovine animals or culture. It's totally different. So we have to get tools, efficient tools, to be able to understand the situation.
That's your take on some recommendation.
For me also, yeah, the design recommendations are completely in line with what we find as an organization. And I think indeed it underlines the importance of involving all the different actors. No one can do this alone. We need all the different actors in the field, policymakers, farmers, veterinarians, everybody who comes on the farm, and even pet owners. And because there also it's very important. And indeed, we need to learn from each other, like Alain says, we have to see how did this farm manage to reduce, what can I learn from it, and that way we can really reduce further.
Most of the line yet. To answer that question is collaboration. I think that was a word that came. I'm sorry, it's very boring because we're repeating each other, but it's really key. I'd like to start.
Yeah,
we agree.
No, we as Animal Health Europe, of course, this is very relevant. But we were talking about collaboration within the animal health sector of the animal value chain. And many of the projects are working, on maybe one or two projects under IMI. We would maybe look to funding a project that truly looks at cross-sectorial challenges, a real One Health approach, and to incorporate the collaborations between the public health, veterinary medicine, and the agricultural staff, environmental aspects of who we are. So we are in a cluster that is being created, or maybe already is really a good way forward. But let's not work alone, even if we are collaborating within our bubble, we should collaborate between bubbles.
Yeah, no, keep the mic. Let's start with you now. Actually, third time is a charm. That's your location for the silver lining. Yeah, you mentioned this cluster of the Amor partnerships, and you have a huge experience on it. So I would like to know how the work done in this partnership is done livestock and so on. Could actually be translated into the work of the Puma and how it could basically contribute to factory at the EU level, how this these topics is
That's a very big question because I don't know what's in the Puma, but what I believe is that one of the successes of the Puma is mutual trust, understanding each other's concerns and points of views, and from there sharing, sharing best practice and disseminating information. So I think the first thing we will put on our agenda for the next meeting, guys, is how can we make best use of the recommendation concern. I don't have in my mind, to be honest, the other outcomes here of the other projects roadmap that you mentioned, but I think we can systematically consider that we would take the recommendation, first share their content, maybe have them translated, and like you suggested, and have them coffee break, and then have a good opportunity to share these outcomes. More at this stage, it has to be a decision taken together, maybe one or the other recommendation. I think the challenge of taking all of them on board and do something with this is not what you're asking. If we could identify one or the other and there's to ask people what we do, and maybe at one point get involved in one of the Horizon Europe projects as an entity. We promote, I would not imagine how, because it's still very not very concrete. It's like a very good presentation of that. But I think that might be a way to consider also moving forward as an entity. So the key word here is collaboration.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if you want to allow me
Don't set it all, yeah, we can spread it and use it in a.
I don't know if you want to add
Always. Well, Ipioma is a good tool for the partnership and collaboration. And fully agree with you, and we will have to study how it will be possible to use design recommendation. But for me, we have already some possible targets. We realize different documents about antimicrobial use and our recommendation. Maybe it could be an opportunity to update this document. So it's only an idea, direct, but for the next board, we will be able to see if it's a possibility, an interesting possibility. Ola will bring this proposal, I'm sure.
Yeah, just have to add one thing that I thought it could be very important, because EPRUMA has European organization, but also have some national members like ANTA, which is sort of EPRUMA, but then on a Belgian level, we have one on Spain and so on. But some countries miss this sort of collaborative networks in their country, and I think that would be another really good tool to have these collaborative networks in these countries also to moving together forwards to responsible, more responsible and moving forward. And that, yeah, some countries still miss that.
For communication.
Yes.
Society.
Thank you. Let's move to another topic, but we stay in the concept of one health. There have been several new policies that faced a change because of the Green Deal is technically should be the guiding line of the entire underlying administration. It's also after they published the proposal, there was a pandemic and also a war, so it was quite complicated to stick with the initial proposal when it comes to so I would like to ask you something like the One Health approach that was theorized at the beginning of the century. There was, it was mentioned by Jean Charles, and before the One Health approach in 2017, if I remember correctly. How this action from the Commission at EU level has changed after the, for instance, the public health strategy and the target. So basically, do you think that has been shaped the general approach of One Health by the Green Deal and the public health strategy, and in particular by target in the set out in the targets reviews antimicrobial set out in the strategy? Who wants to start? Because you were distracted.
Well, in respect to IMR, I think the most important, like I said, was the 50% reduction, and we were moving towards that anyway already. So yeah, it's in the pipeline. But there, maybe more for IMR, more important were the two new regulations that we have. The one on veterinary medicines and medicated feed, which really put together a whole toolbox to fight IMR and to have more prudent and responsible use and monitoring and so on. Now, in respect to the One Health, it's the interlinkage between animal health, human health, and our planet, one ecosystem, but I still have the feeling that talking to different persons, they understand different things about it. And I think, therefore, what was said earlier, One Health now, it's still very much an idealistic idea, but then when it comes to the practical terms, on the policies itself and things like that, and even research, there is some One Health research, but it's still very limited. And I think there we could do indeed much more. We are very similar, and we have the same challenges, and we could learn from each other in different sectors. So I think we still have a way to go, and having the same understanding of One Health and would put One Health really in practice.
I know because I know what he's going to say, and I can react it.
Okay, it's difficult to manage people.
Yeah, there's chemistry in this panel. I can
We are kind of awkward, but working for the same and important. But the One Health concept, I said, concept will stay for the future. The concept, it's a general approach. As Nancy said, it's a little bit idealistic. For me, one of the important parts of this concept is one planet. And the question about the public health strategy and the Green Deal, it's a European option. And it's a little bit, sorry, Jean-Charles, a little bit naive to think all countries in the world are ready to follow European standards, even are able to follow. It's a question very important because we are thinking about AMR, and AMR is a world concern. And again, I gave the example of one farmer not doing well measures, even if one country did totally differently the management of the risk without taking care of AMR, all that we are going to do will be written by the attitude of this culture. It's the same for the clinic. It's the same question for the clinic. So we are to be aware that One Health is the concept. We have to work with this concept because it's a good concept, but we have to be aware is a little bit weak because we need to gather all the countries in the world. Pretty difficult. We are not totally optimistic.
Which one I'm surprised I'll agree with you on that. But I think it's just a concept, it's a potential concept. Because like I was saying, working inside, I was having the animal health sector, livestock sector, working in the standalone itself. And One Health also maybe something should be called is more than just AMR. And this is where maybe I think the general call mission that we use the One Health concept, which is great. That's what it served to tackle AMR. And we were, I think, mentioning through the second phase, the first series of actions. Now that we're in the second phase, and yes, One Health concept supports this, but One Health is more than just AMR. And in the Green Deal, I think we saw the reduction of the sales of antibiotics in 50%. There's no worries for our industries to work towards that number, political number. We, like you said, that 43% now since 2011, but there is a limit. You can't just see the trend go down to zero. There has to be a balance. If we go down to zero, that's what we want to achieve. And there's no problem, there's no issue. What I'm saying is that if industry wants to be perceived like is an economic actor, it is not by pushing the sales of that, if anything. So I think that it's important to do that. This is very clear in our minds. The engagement is very sincere and in fact, the reduction of abuse and the reduction of need has been growing since 15 years.
Actually, I'd like to start with my question on something that Alan just said. It's a bit like the climate, you know? We know that the climate debate at a certain point has seen farmers, lots of farmers at the center of I wouldn't say an attack, but a bit of taking the farming indeed. So it's do you think that something similar could happen when it comes to these types of farmers and using antimicrobials? We were talking about this in the panel with Colin, Marty, and Jean-Charles. And we talk about this list from the European Medical Agency on antimicrobials. We said for humans, for animals, and there was a clash in the parliament about this. And it's my take, but it really looks like following the same pattern of a certain debate around farming that we've seen, for instance, when it came to schemes, when it came to the greening of the agricultural policy. So I would like to hear from you if you think you being caught involved in this kind of, I'd say, not particularly constructive debate, even when it comes to AMR on, let's say, agriculture or stuff.
Well, I will say you have to refer to the speech of Antonio. At the beginning, he explained how farming is under attack already for a lot of reasons. So we have to take care, and I said in my introductory presentation, we have to communicate on our, but it's a long way because some, I would say some NGO are used to take the example of the use of antimicrobial to explain is because you have a picky husbandry and you don't take enough care of the welfare of animals. And it's a compensation measure to use antimicrobials. I heard this speech. So we have to bring the truth, the reduction already made, and the involvement, the work like TISA, and the proposal to improve the husbandry also with the concern of animal health and animal welfare.
And Nancy, I already know what Roxanne think because it was in another group of Europe, but Nancy, you want to say something?
I completely agree, and sometimes I think just going back to what Vara said earlier, it must be terrible hard to be a pig farmer at this point, because you have agricultural farming, you have to increase the welfare, you have to stop tail docking, you have to stop castrating pigs, you have to stop using zinc oxide, you have to reduce antibiotic use, and you have a lot of new regulations regarding greenhouse gases. And they're all necessary, but it has to be done step by step. It's evolution, not revolution. And there is evolution, a lot of evolution, but there's no miracle solutions again. It has to go step by step, because you don't want to damage your animal, the health of your animals, or the welfare of your animals, so you need to do it the correct way, and you need to stay in business. So it has to be done step by step, and this is being done. But it cannot be done from one day on the next day. And the same for what I said earlier, banning certain antimicrobials is not a solution. We have already very limited amount of antimicrobials to treat bacterial infections, especially non-negative infections. That's a huge problem. We have to use them as prudently and as responsibly as possible. Banning them won't solve the issue. And I think to end on a very positive note is what we see, because the whole issue here is not antimicrobial, it's AMR, it's resistance. And what we see in the veterinary sector, in the animal health sector, is that resistance to certain bacteria is going down. We can do it. So we're on the right track, but it is evolution, not evolution.
I was sort of saying you can say something, because I mean, not all the people in the audience read your act, they also read the other ones.
Competitions to come back on what Nancy said, yes, I think you asked for silver lining. I think it's responsible use. I'm sorry, again, it's not very innovative, as researchers, we use them responsibly as humans and in the animal sector. I think we can, that bacteria have real resistance. Of course, the first thing we started with this is before us. I mean, I know my colleague always gives me this example of animal found, as a result of the climate change, so the ice, and they found resistant bacteria in that animal. We've never seen any animal recover before. So It's life. You have to acknowledge that it will always exist. And it's true that livestock is being hard in general. You mentioned the pig sector. There's also livestock bashing, and for different reasons. Some have a different agenda than just fighting AMR. There's a new initiative that just came out a couple of weeks ago. It's slaughtering animals. Okay. That means if it collects more than 1 million signatures in many countries, the Commission will have to do something. So I think we have to keep the science and start at the middle of the science-based decision making. You mentioned the list, which is quite interesting because you know that maybe that the Commission does not have a lot of power when it comes to human. You saw that during COVID, they really did their best to coordinate, but they weren't given enough power. However, I don't know if it's almost 100% for historical reasons in the hand of the Commission. So they rightly used the revision of the legislation on veterinary medicines to draft a list of antibiotics reserved for human use. So it was a very clever way to be able to take a decision in a field that it is not of their competence. I'm being very simplistic here, but through the animal health section. But that does not mean that you should have no more antibiotics for animals. And this list, let's not forget, even if there was a debate in the Parliament, it's great to have a debate, but at the end of the day, it was based on a scientific opinion by a scientific agency that is supported by the European Commission, and the Commission replicated this list in the scientific commitment. I don't know how the Commission could challenge science, nor could anybody else who is not in PMA in this case, which is the European medicine. So please, let's also keep science and any political decision making in Europe and around the world. That would be my plea, not a circular.
I would say because it's also the silver lining.
Thank you.
So it's again your time, and you have some questions. Keep in mind that the question from the previous panel were quite good, so the bar is quite high. But it's your moment to get some questions. That's the time.
Maybe a suggestion, a question. But before that, just to comment about the level playing field. First, I think now with the new regulatory framework, and we have the SPS measures framework. I think now some measures about antimicrobial resistance, some measures could be taken for trade imports. So I think we are not without any tool. Now it's outside my area of competence or action in the Commission. So I don't know how far we can go and the difficulties faced, because I guess there were difficulties faced. But I think there are some tools at least then to say, okay, we do this at the European level and we can do nothing about our reports. I think there are some tools. Also on the human sector, I think with COVID and the pandemic issues, I think if I'm not wrong, the WHO is working now on a treaty for pandemic fairness. And if I'm not wrong, AMR will be included. So I guess that also in the medical sector, in the public health domain, there will be similar. I also think that if I'm not wrong, in the Commission, we are thinking about new actions, not necessarily a phase 3 action plan against AMR, but something that will probably target more public health sector, certain actions, maybe council recommendations or something like this. It is in the pipeline. But I think there as well, we are not the only ones. There will be also in the public health sector. And the last thing, comment is at global level, maybe we need to think how the OIE standards or guidelines Do they have to stay as guidelines? Or something stronger could be put in place in the veterinary domain globally? But that's beyond the Commission. You play a role, but at least. Now, my suggestion is we here in the panel on One Health. And I may be wrong, sorry if I don't know Epruma enough. I think Epruma is a veterinary. What about having contacts with the public health sector? Do you see how far? Because if we say One Health, we have to apply One Health everywhere. What about trying to see if in the medical sector we could learn something, or we could not teach, but they could learn something out of this and have some contacts. You see, at least test. Maybe nothing will come out of this. I don't know. That's something. And for the I mentioned even here in the slides I presented some projects that are relevant, like alternatives to microbials, etc. What about enlarging the RNA project to include some projects in the medical sector that look into AMR, alternatives to antimicrobials? That would kind of show how at least there may be some options to go out of the silo.
I really like the ideas. Yes, I think we should try to EPHA or food or will be more than you mentioned the OIE guidelines. Please come to our event on the 6th of June. Wednesday, while we'll be there. So, thank you for the invitation. So you can talk to her about it. It's going to be about One Health. So, I mean, this is really high on our agenda. So, everybody here is invited. I'm share the rest of the group. And level playing field, I think we totally understand that the situation the farmers are in. I'm myself used to work in crop protection for 50 years. So I am totally on that side of the discussion. But you have to be careful when you ask for reciprocity, what that entails. Especially the way our medicines are authorized, so antibiotics. They're authorized in a very structured and scientific way in Europe, and so are they in other countries. Maybe you copy paste the list that is used in Europe to another country when we don't know the disease prevalence in those countries, and not respecting their approval system. And you know it's very sad. I think we have to be careful to have a copy paste approach, but more making sure that there is a system in place to also tackle AMR in other countries that is similar, that is equivalent. I don't know which great term I can use. Then absolutely, that's important as a driver. But to impose our list on other countries without analyzing what it could be, it could even have animal welfare consequences. Oh, sorry, you want to export to Europe, can't use this medication? Yeah, but my animal needs it. It's sick. Well, you can, but then you can't export to Europe anymore. Yes, but no. So, being again simplistic, but let's be a little more nuanced in the way we approach rather than the neighbors. We can discuss it much later.
Yes, as a we are working with European doctors now for I think about 10 years or something. We have a memorandum of understanding, and it started with also IMR, but then it expanded to zoonosis and also other aspects now that is on our memorandum. And we also did joint workshops, for example, on One Health education, that's more from the start, from the education field already, more collaboration between the two sectors. And overall, it goes really well, although we have some disagreement on the listing. Also, FE is involved since a couple of years in several One Health networks, and these are networks that often work only the human side, the human doctor side, and yeah, we are only veterinary partners. Now they're coming a little bit more. And one of the things that we learned quickly is that for them it's very difficult to understand how animals are kept and bred and raised, the whole system. So that was something we really spent a lot explaining to them. And another very positive thing I think that they also now have in the commission is the IMR One Health Network. Before it was already One Health Network with 3 sectors involved, but only on governmental level. And now they want to expand it also to stakeholders. So there is a lot going, but yeah, it's still yeah, I would like to see it go faster. Maybe I'm just ambitious there.
You want to say something?
They said a lot of things. Yes, it's late, but I just want to add about reciprocity at international level. Yes, we have to. In the regulation 2019-6, we have Article 118, and we have the possibility to have regulation, the Commission, and other regulation for the implementation of this article. First, I am expecting when. And second, I totally support the remark of Watson, because I already said all the countries are not ready to follow us. And all the countries are not able to follow us. So we have to take care of what we are going to do. So when I say when, I am sure we will have a lot of people. Maybe we have to try to bring some proposals to actually find a solution, but it's a real wish. For me, it what I was thinking about it. But of course, on my conclusion, one is very important to be the concept, to be aware of the compulsory aspect of the concept.
I thank you, our panelists, for the interesting take on today's topic. And I would like to invite again Ed on stage for the wrap up of the pass. Now you know we can say all the things. Yeah, and tell us a bit more again. Thank you. I wasn't 100% aware I was supposed to provide some closing remarks, so I didn't prepare any that day. No, it's been a long day, and I think it's already quite late. I think I enjoyed today, also yesterday, so big thanks to Paula, the whole Thomas team, so I think Elena, and I think Laura, for in organizing these 2 days. I mean, collaboration. I heard a lot about collaboration. We'll continue working together. The ESP-AC report these proved to be optimistic in the recent trends reduction. It also shows that some countries, same species, they're using 5, 6, 7 times more than others, so there is still quite some room for improvement. But maybe with a positive note, not so long ago we developed an association where we coach economics. We organized that on the farm to fork ambition and strategies. And one of the speakers over there, he basically said, if we look at recent trends, if we look at the current proposals of the farm agriculture policy, if we look at additional policies in place or proposals in place beyond farm agriculture policy, there's only one of all the farm reform ambitions
that was basically my positive note to end with. And then a big thanks to people from the panel, also people from the previous panel for being here and discussing with us and looking at our these are our outputs. The project is nearly over. We are continuing to work until June. There's still a few deliverables, social goals, and a few dissemination products to definitely reach you in some way or in one way or another. Perhaps, Lena, I think you should be up here as well, if you want to or not. So yes, I have been invited today, also yesterday, to provide closing remarks. Because since the beginning, I used to be project coordinator, but especially the last year and a half, actually this lady who has been taking care of almost everything in terms of managing the project, but also managing our quite important work package 4, where we demonstrate pilots, multi-parliament team. So big thanks to you, Elena, and maybe I'll leave the very final words to you.
Well, I thank you very much for being here. I'm very happy to be closing this project in an upper note. I do think that we have achieved a lot of interesting conclusions today, and the recommendations that everyone was showing this morning, they will be passed on to the panel members, and hopefully they will make their way into their networks, and they will also be able to enact change, and the legacy of Zara will not stop here, and we'll keep on living. That's it. So thank you all.